Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm your host Mike Ventura, and today we're talking about proper planting of fruit trees. And that includes standard fruit trees, semi-dwarf, and dwarf fruit trees. Okay, let's get right into it. First of all, when you're planting fruit trees, you want to make sure that the trees are going to be planted in a full sun environment. The reason being is that when the tree produces what is known as a crown, or this is where all the foliage is produced on the tree, you want to have that in full sun, and you want to have where it's not competing with any kind of light from another tree, and certainly you don't want to have in a shady environment. Fruit trees want a full sun environment, 8 to 10 hours a day. You want to make certain that your soil drains very, very well. Extremely important. In previous YouTube, I provided information as far as preparing the soil, so you want to make sure you have a soil that drains very, very well. I strongly suggest if you are growing fruit trees, get a soil pH test done. Go on out there and find out what kind of soil you have and how to properly amend the soil so you can hopefully maximize the amount of fruit that you'll be getting off your trees. Proper staking of the trees. We're also talking in practice called vertical mulching, which is a very important cultural practice to get the moisture to go down deep into the root zone of the tree. So let's get into this topic of proper planting of fruit trees. First thing is you want to make certain, as I said, you have a full sun environment. At least 8 to 10 hours a day. As we get closer to the spring, those trees get uninterrupted sunlight. You want to make certain that when these trees develop, where all the foliage develops on the tree, that's called the crown of the tree. And consequently, you don't want to have the trees close together. So give them enough room to grow and develop, mainly because you want to get good airflow. Airflow for a tree is extremely important, especially for fruit trees. You want to get good airflow moving through the crowns of the trees. When you're planting the trees, and make sure also you take any dead wood that might be on the tree, take that dead wood out. When you're planting the tree, at the very base of the tree, you're going to find this area that looks like a flange where it tapers down. That is called the trunk taper. Now, very, very important, when you're planting that tree, that fruit tree, and this is whether it be a standard, semi-dwarf, or dwarf, they have that trunk taper. You want to make sure you plant about 2 inches above that trunk taper. The reason being is that when that tree settles, okay, it's going to settle right where it should be, so the trunk taper of the tree is exposed. What you don't want to do is plant the tree at trunk taper. The tree will settle, and by settling and covering up that trunk taper, you allow the tree to become susceptible to fungi that can attack, and diseases that can attack the base of the tree. Next, you want to make certain that you have a good irrigation system going. I strongly suggest to use a drip irrigation system on fruit trees. Drip irrigation, we'll talk about how the drip irrigation correlates with a vertical mulching system, which I'll be talking about. But drip irrigation works because you want to keep the trunks of the trees dry. You want the moisture to go down deep around the root zone, but you don't want to have any moisture right around the trunk of the tree. Very, very important that trunk, and I mean the trunk tissue, is dry, okay? But yet when you irrigate by having your drip tubing, that's going to be applying water directly to these vertical mulching tubes, which I'll explain in a moment, and that's going to allow the water to get down deep into the root zone and help that root system to develop. Vertical mulching. What is vertical mulching? Vertical mulching is a practice where you insert PVC tubes in the soil, and the PVC tubes will direct the water to go down deep into where the root zone of the tree is. How long should the PVC tubes be? About maybe 18 to 24 inches in length. You want to have 2 of them, one on both sides of the tree. Non-perforated PVC, and the PVC should be at least 2 to 3 inches in diameter. So consider that like a drainage pipe sized PVC tube that goes into the soil. So when you're planting the tree, you want to take a look at the tree and see approximately 24 inches off radius from the trunk of the tree out, and 24 inches from the opposite side of the tree out. And that's where you want to put your PVC tubes. Make sure the bottom of the tube is open, of course. That way you put your water and your nutrients inside the PVC tubes. The water goes directly into the root zone of the tree, or down to the root zone of the tree, and it's not going to have an issue as far as getting caught up in any kind of soil compaction problems. Next, what you want to do is go through and do your staking. Very, very important, because when you're growing your fruit trees, developing the root system is extremely important. What we don't want that tree to do is to be held up by tree stakes. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove the nursery stake, and you want to put stakes on opposite sides of the tree. So you have one on one side of the tree, one on the other side of the tree. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put a figure 8 loop around the stake of the tree and back around the tree itself. So you create this figure 8 loop pattern. What's going to happen is, and what's going to happen now is that when that tree gets hit by any kind of wind, the tree is going to move, but you're encouraging the root system to hold the tree up. That's why you don't want to have one single stake in the back of the tree. That's very, very important that that tree be allowed to move a little bit, and that way the root system is going to get used to holding this tree up. Extremely important we build a strong, healthy root system. So by going through, and then you can start adding organic amends to the soil. And again, as I mentioned in a previous video, is that using an organic amend that will encourage available oxygen to the soil, which will allow nutrients to become available from the soil. Okay, as the tree gets growing, of course you want to add nutrients to it, but right now what we're doing is we're just getting that root system established in the soil, making sure the trunk taper is above grade, make sure you have your figure 8 loop on the tree stakes, which you're going to go through and hold the tree up. And the tree stakes up for a period of time. You can take the stakes out because the root system will be strong enough to hold that tree up. Then, as I said, on the irrigation system, I suggest using drip irrigation. It's an extremely good way of getting moisture to go directly down deep into the tree, and versus you don't want to have just spray head irrigation where it's going to be hitting the trunks of the trees and can potentially cause problems. Mulch. Use of mulch is outstanding. Fruit trees love it. So go through and don't be afraid to put a blanket of mulch, at least 1.5 inches of mulch on top of the soil. Mulch is an outstanding way of controlling the weed population. And you're going to notice that once you incorporate drip irrigation, your weed population is going to drop off dramatically. Because what you're doing, you're putting moisture directly where the root zone is going to get the water versus irrigating all the soil around it. And that's what you want. You want to put the water directly where the root zone benefits it the most. What does the mulch do? The mulch acts as an insulation to the soil. It also keeps moisture from evaporating out of the soil quickly and reduces soil compaction. And that's really, really big, reducing soil compaction. Because as the soil starts getting compacted and compressed, what happens is you can introduce certain pest problems that can attack the tree. So you use a good mulch going around the tree, and don't be afraid to go right up against the tree, and that way and stretch it out so that you have mulch going all the way around the tree. And when you irrigate, of course, you're putting that water directly into the vertical mulching tubes, but now you've introduced some very, very good sound cultural practices. And as the tree does get going, you can use bone meal, which is organic phosphorus, which is an extremely good product to work with. What phosphorus does is going to promote root hair development, flower production, and fruit production. And that's what you want when you're growing fruit trees. What you don't want to do is use fast-reacting nitrogen. You want to use slow-reacting nitrogen. An example is blood meal, slow-reacting, and cottonseed meal, or slow-reacting organic nitrogen. And fruit trees love this. So don't be afraid to put some of that out. And again, put that into the vertical mulching tubes, and you can wash it directly into the root zone, and it works just great. One last thing you're going to want to do to the trees, and that is to apply a product called Tanglefoot. Tanglefoot is an organic product, and it's a relatively messy product to work with, so I suggest you work with gloves that you're not going to want anymore. And basically all you're doing is you're going to wrap the trunk of the trees with this product, and all it does is it traps crawling insects from moving up the tree. So it's very important that you get these trees off to a good, healthy start. The Tanglefoot is just a good way of keeping the pests down. So with that, that's how you get your fruit trees going. As I said, just to recap, make sure they're in a full sun environment, 8 to 10 hours a day of good sun. Drip irrigation, they'll love that. Introduce vertical mulching tubes. And then finally, you want to make certain that you amend the soil using organic amend, and use your bone meal, which is organic phosphorus, and then the use of mulch to protect the soil and keep the compaction down. Okay, so that should get you started. Have a very good day. And again, thank you very much and welcome to the program.